Good morning, everybody. I'm Kimberly Pettigrew. I'm the Director of Food Systems at the United Way of Greater Knoxville. I enrolled in Future Generations what feels like forever ago, not quite a decade, but about 7 years. And I had just taken a new role at a very small nonprofit called Nourish Knoxville that runs farmers markets. And as I was starting that job, this degree was really helpful because we were a very grassroots organization looking to build our operations, our policies, procedures, and incentive work that we do. We were looking to scale some of that. One of the other things that we were approached with right as I was starting was we had two members from the East Knoxville community in Knox County, Tennessee, which is where I live. The East Knoxville community is a predominantly Black community. And they are actually located in what we call in the United States a low income, low access area, meaning that they do not have access to healthy foods. People in that area also have live in poverty and many times lack transportation to be able to go to other places to receive food. So we were approached by two people from the community, and I'm going to kind of come down so that you guys can see a little bit more. So we were approached by two separate groups from the community to actually work on this goal or this issue, which was to increase access to healthy foods. And what they wanted to do was start a farmers market, a community-owned market. And so it was perfect timing because I had been enrolled in not only SEED with Professor Taylor and Luke, but also in nonprofit management. And so it was a really good opportunity to apply these new practices that I was learning within the degree within the community itself. And so we did things, we aligned very closely with the seven tasks. And so we established a coordinating committee, not only with the two individuals that were interested in kicking off this work, but also within a broader context of community of people who had already been involved in food or who were interested in developing that area that we were working in more specifically. We used a lot of evidence. So we tried to figure out, what existed. As I mentioned, we were building from successes and learning from things that had already been established. It was really helpful to use things like work plans in this space. I hadn't done a lot of facilitation or project management before. And then we kept some of the momentum going by using GIFs and mid-course corrections. So I really wanted you guys to see some of the things that we did. So here's some photos of the community marketing and branding products that we created. And so it was exciting to work with community to develop these things, and taking strategic communications is really helpful here to have that support. We also did monitoring and evaluation by doing both customer and vendor surveys. So we did paper copies because we thought that was more accessible to our community. And so this is some of the documentation and artifacts from those spaces. I think that one of the things that I learned most importantly at this beginning phase was that it's really important not to tell community what to do. And sometimes when you think that you've tried something before and it didn't work, it doesn't mean that it's not going to be the same outcome for someone else. And so really to check your biases and to learn what it means to be a supporter and to have this community of practice at Future Generations was really helpful. So as we've gotten funding from a grant to run the market for 2 years, and the main goal was to have everything be community owned. So homegrown produce, homemade food, and handmade items. And we recognized that there was this really big gap in that we didn't actually have people who were coming to the market to sell produce that were from the community. And as you start digging into root cause a little bit more, you uncover things. So I see the market as like our seed, right? The seed that we planted. But now we're starting to understand the conditions of our soil a little more and what we need to really grow from the assets that we have. And so we learned that there really was this lack of access to land to grow food. And so the two people that I worked with from the beginning, Pastor Battle and Vivian Williams, who are pictured here, Pastor Battle had actually been pastoring at a historically Black church. And he left the church to become what he calls a pastor of collard greens. And so he actually established a farm called Battlefield Farm and Gardens. Miss Vivian worked with the National Women in Agriculture and began implementing community gardens in schools. And she also worked with the the national government. She lobbied against Congress to bring 4-H education, which is an agriculture leadership program, to school-age children in the inner city. And so as we were starting to create this access to land to grow food, we learned that maybe our story that we had been telling ourselves about the community wasn't true. So we thought we were doing all these new and innovative things, but we learned through listening to residents as well as conducting archival research that we were actually on a path to restoration. The East Knoxville community had once been a rich agriculture community. As you can see here, there's stores, there were farmers, there were people who were actually, they owned a seed store. And so there was this very robust community-owned system. And so during these few years, I had actually taken a break from my time at Future Generations, and I was really just applying the concepts that I had been learning in seed scale, as well as strategic communications and nonprofit like foundations. But what brought me back was bottom-up economics. I had realized that, you know, as we're talking about restoration, we're getting more into wealth and ownership. And I was really lacking the skills to be able to start working with community on that. So I really wanted to show some of these artifacts that I created in my time in bottom-up economics, where we started outlining some of those historical impacts like redlining and urban renewal, which were federal government tactics to that led to the historical disinvestment that we have today in creating those food deserts. And so some of the things that have continued to grow, once again, we're creating a more fertile soil, so more things are emerging, is we actually created a community garden and growers alliance. So we're creating this backbone support for all of those projects around access to land to grow food. We have integrated the network of Black churches. We realized that one of the spaces where we actually had a lot of land was in churches, and they weren't using this land. And so we've successfully recruited, at this point, 2 to 3 churches that are actively growing food. So one is the Richard S. Brown Community Garden. They have more than 100 gardens installed, as well as fruit trees. Lynn and Steeny, Miss Bessie is kicking her project off this year. Each of these gardens are actually taking a model rooted in tithing. So they're passing on 10% of what they grow to the community who isn't able to grow food, but does need access to healthy foods. And then we even have a concrete garden. So the city of Knoxville donated property to turn a concrete pad into a thriving garden. And it's the latest garden that we have added to our group. And so as I'm going through bottom-up economics, like if I'm being honest, my plan was not really to get my master's. I wasn't coming back to graduate. I was really trying to come back and learn the skills that I needed to impact my community. So I finished up bottom economics and I'm like, wait a second. The next session we have scale with Professor Taylor, and then we also have leadership manager, like strategic leadership. And so I'm here and I'm like, okay, well, you know, we've been listening to the community even more, we're learning and growing, and there's this thing that keeps coming up. And it's like, okay, we need access to food. We have to have land to grow our own food. But what we haven't tackled beyond a smaller scale is that access to wealth and ownership. We need a food system that is for community and by community. And so as we're continuing in this revolution of rising aspirations that we've learned in seed and scale, we're really moving towards, as I mentioned, restoring the Black food system, but in that wealth and ownership piece. So some of the products that we're working on right now, I'm really excited about because it's taken 7 years for us to get here. And so things are just kind of happening in every which direction now, which is great. But I wanted to focus on a couple that were food specific. So one, we've actually started a Fannie Lou veggie bus. And so we're taking produce many times grown by community to community members in our senior and disabled towers who don't have the means to get to other places. Some people have said that they haven't had produce in a decade. It is, once again, a community-owned model. So Pastor Battle is running that, and once again, getting produce from local farms as well as from the community itself. The Rooted East Collective, which is the group of folks here formed. And so they're actually a collective that is trying to use household economies. So they're teaching people how to grow food in their own spaces. but they are also historically documenting people's memories of when the Black-owned food system was self-sufficient and resilient, and so that we have this place to work from that highlights the assets from our community from generations past. And so I started mapping some of these successes in our community mapping course that I'm taking right now. And so this is the historic redlining maps. The red areas would be where there was historical disinvestment. The blue is poverty. And so the higher the circle, the bigger the circle, the higher the poverty rates. And then very small, you can see where we've started having interventions. So the trucks are where we have the Fannie Lou Veggie Van going. The basket is where the East Side Sunday Market is. And then these little stars are the churches that have come on board. And then here's Battlefield Farm over here. He used to be right over here, but somebody bought up a property. And so now he owns the property that he has here.
10 minutes.
Thanks, Dan. Once again, I tried to add as many artifacts as I can to show you the path that I was on. And lastly, when we were in scale, I was able to really lay out the things that I would say are more of a mapping, all of the things that I've been working on and how they fit together. And we've had a couple of really big wins lately when it comes to building wealth and ownership. So the first is we are working with Pastor Battle to transition the Fannie Lou Veggie Van actually into a mobile option. It will be a for-profit wholesale model called the 1-5. But we're excited because it's Black owned, as well as a model that is going to have increased access and affordability, which is important to community. I was able to use my scale lab to actually lay out the different features that existed. So what happens to a community if we put a food pantry? What happens to a community if we use a mobile for-profit? And so it was really exciting to be able to lay that out, not only for myself, but just 2 weeks ago, I actually presented this to a hospital that's interested in supporting the work. So being able to document this work for community has been a really important skill I've learned from future generations, because community doesn't always have the ability or time to do that. We've also been working with our public housing group, and they have donated land back to the community. It's a Black woman-owned space that will be a youth and garden hub. So it will focus on after-school care, mental health, and will have access to gardens and kitchens. And then finally, one of the ones that I'm most impressed with myself about, because I don't think I would have ever gotten here without scale and without bottom-up economics, is a grant I applied for during my last semester and received a healthy food financing grant in the tone of $1 million to build capacity for to help meet the gaps for entrepreneurs that are actually from marginalized and disinvested communities. And the goal is access and affordability, but also wealth and ownership. And so I was like, this really hits all of the marks. And so we're creating a community-owned program. I'm rooting everything in seed scale. So we'll actually have a committee. We will be working from that same space, and that's been exciting. So once again, my goal was not to come to Future Generations necessarily to get a degree. That's been a byproduct of all the great things that I've learned from this space. And I think just emphasizing that the applied learning has been such a big deal to me, getting that gap to really extend my time, as well as having a community of practice, are things that I find invaluable. So happy to answer any questions now.
Thank you, Kimberly. We've got 4 minutes. Does anybody have a question or a comment? You might raise your hand. But in the meantime, thank you, Kimberly, as well, while people are deciding to raise their hand. This is exactly what we had in mind. So I congratulate you. Very interesting.
While you guys are thinking of questions, I did want to pop back up to the beginning. I am a white woman and I've been working with a Black community. And so I really hope that this has been something I've been able to demonstrate to my community about what the role is from a top-down organization perspective. Working at the United Way, as you guys know, is a big global brand. And so just trying to demonstrate this not only for my community, but for the United Way as a whole. And so it's been really exciting to see our CEO at the worldwide level really embrace this strategy. And I've been able to share with her what I'm doing with this degree. And so it's making a big difference. And so I appreciate you all for allowing me to be able to demonstrate that.
Ellie.
Oh, right, and right before Chris, Kimberly, this is great, and I love the story that you told through the. I noticed all the names of the classes you took. I appreciate that. Oh my gosh. Oh, right. I had a question. So one of the sort of just to kind of talk about the program, because that's my sort of jam. What do you think you kind of brought from your peers? How do you feel like your peers kind of fed into this? Sorry if you're not prepared for that question. I realize it's sort of off the cuff, but yeah, if you can think of anything, that would be really great to hear.
Yeah, I think because I've been in the program for 7 years, some of my peers are from way back, even in the bending bamboo class. And so one of the things that hit me at the beginning was collective governance. We usually take this really top-down approach to how we run nonprofit organizations here. And so getting to learn from some of my African and Vietnamese counterparts around collective governance structures is one of the first places I can think about of really being able to use that community of practice. Secondly, some of my classmates, we still just talk. Like Mashiri and I read each other's grant applications. We share ideas. We even build connections. And so I think that once again, it feels like what we have informally is this community of practice because we're able to take these things that we're seeing people apply and we're able to bring them back here and tailor them to our community. And I don't get that where I live. I don't have people who have this skill. And so that's been really invaluable to me.
Thanks. That's great to hear. And I'm glad that that's been fruitful for you. Chris?
Chris?
Thank you. It's a great presentation, Kimberly. I was curious from your employer's perspective, if they've really noticed the difference of the methodology and what it brings to the development of the community and how it's working. If they have they noticed, or what has been their feedback is what I would like to know more about.
Yeah, so I actually got my job because I applied the same practices to our city's COVID response. I was tasked with making sure everyone had food to eat in my community during COVID, and I demonstrated a seed methodology in our response. And we actually had this really weird thing that happened of our community reported like less need for food during COVID because we did such a good job of having everybody's needs met that they didn't have to call. And so I actually got my job at United Way because of that. And then I was hired to conduct assessments and do strategic planning around that. Once again, that community ownership piece is something that we'll be using as a model, not only for our local United Way, but potentially some of the worldwide impacts as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's great.
Thank you, Kimberly. That bell is your 18 minutes. Thank you very much, Kimberly. Exactly what I was looking for. Grace, you're next.
Hi, everyone. Okay, can you see my screen?
It's loading.
Okay.
Now we can. Great.
Well, thanks for joining me as I share my communities and how I've grown and developed over the past 4 years. This spotlight collection is just a few of the community labs and artifacts from my courses at Future Generations, in addition to some other highlights along the way. My spotlight collection is intended for you all, my classmates, colleagues, professors, and all of y'all who are connected to the university in different ways. Creating this has been an inspiring way for me to revisit memories and projects over the past couple years, and I'm very excited to share it with you all. So journey with me as I introduce my communities. So beginning in 2020, I had been working in rural southern West Virginia for 4 years when COVID hit. I was feeling a little bit isolated and stuck, uncertain about my community and my role. And right during that time, I received an email from a friend about a course at Future Generations University. Betsy Taylor and I had been connected through the Appalachian Land Study that focuses on land ownership and tax laws in the Appalachian region. And as it turned out, Betsy's brother was the president of Future Generations University. The email recommended the Bottom-Up Economies course. I was intrigued, and I reached out to the university. A few weeks later, I was enrolled. Not in Bottom-Up Economies, but in Intro to Seed Scale. A most important lesson I learned from Intro to Seed Scale is how to define a community, specifically the Big Laurel Learning Center community that I focused on during that first course, and where I'm currently in my 8th year as director. In that first course, I was introduced to new tools like mind mapping and new ideas like Seed Scale. I also got better acquainted with my board members, donors, student leaders, and other members of the broader community. So over the course of my master's degree, I worked closely with 4 distinct but overlapping communities. I've continued my time at Big Laurel, this one, where I live and work full-time, and I'm also part of 3 other communities: Jasmer Land Trust, Kermit Pre-K-8 Middle School, and Friends of the Tug Fork River. All of these are located in southern West Virginia, and some people belong to more than one of the communities. These connections often make understanding context and building trust even easier. So over the course of my master's degree, what is Big Laurel and why is it special? Here's the definition of our community. We're a mountain community. Here's the definition that our community came up with during my Intro to Seed Scale class. We're a mountain community focusing on education, environment, and social change. We're nestled high on the ridge above Big Laurel Branch, which is in the Marbone Creek watershed, uniquely located in one of the most biodiverse forests in the world and in some of the oldest mountains in the world. The Big Laurel community is proud to welcome visitors and students from right down the creek and from around the world. Next community here, Jasmer, you can see they're located near each other. The next community I focused with was the John A. Shepherd Memorial Ecological Reserve, which was started in 1976, the same year as Big Laurel. And it is the land trust that Big Laurel is home to, so it's located on the property, and in addition to a handful of other households. The person who founded it was Edwina Pepper, and her dream when she started it was to cultivate a community dedicated to the protection of the natural environment and the preservation of mountain culture and tradition. The next community I want to introduce you to are my students and the group at Kermit Pre-K-8. I work with the middle school students, grade approximately 90 kids in 6th through 8th grade. Each spring semester, I teach weekly environmental gardening lessons. Together, we learn about the necessary components of life, germination, the water cycle, conservation, and more. And then later in the semester, we plant, and compost, and harvest, and weed, and take care of the plants. The final community I'd like to introduce you to is the Friends of the Tug Fork River. This is our largest community, made up of 21,000 members, and ironically, the newest to be officially organized as a formal group. This watershed spans 3 states and 7 counties. This community is connected by a love for the local river and its tributaries. Community members appreciate the river for its recreation opportunities and work to improve the water quality. So that was the introduction to my communities. that I've worked with throughout my time with the master's degree. This is now the artifacts. One of my first projects that I completed was the community definition with my intro to seed scale class for Big Laurel Learning Center. It's been really cool to look back and see where I started and how important those fundamental steps can be. This early process taught me the basics of networking, fostering a sense of community, and since we found ourselves envisioning meetings again recently at Big Laurel, it's been a really nice reminder to reflect and reground ourselves. And next, community lab and artifact I'd like to share with y'all. Is the independent study I conducted with the Jasmer Land Trust. This was actually one of the last projects that I completed as a part of my master's degree last year. But I wanted to share it with you at the beginning because I was really inspired to break seed scale down to a really simple level that can be taught and passed on to community and used as a tool over and over again. So this was sort of a two-part project in which I was facilitating a community discussion and leading them through the process to complete their development project. And then I was also simultaneously creating the workshop tools with the idea that they can then be adopted and adapted again with this community, but almost any other scenario that tool would exist. So Jasmer chose to focus on a signage campaign to educate and welcome visitors to the property. One of the coolest things I learned from this process was this community had encountered some rifts and some challenges along the way over the course of the last few years. And so really seeing that come together and working towards a common goal gave a new sense of like connection and kind of a healing process. So the third project I'd like to share with y'all involves my students at Kermit Pre-K 8, which I had facilitated seed scale projects with for several semesters in different courses. But this class, during the bottom-up economies that I finally got to take, the one that I first initially I was excited about, I finally got to take it a couple years later. These students took their gardening a step further. So after working on their gardens all spring, I led the students through designing business models at the end of the school year. And each student participated in brainstorming potential products, services, customers, revenue streams, community and environmental benefits. And then they chose their entrepreneurship project and actually put it into practice. So from selling garden salads to fresh mint tea and fruit lemonades, the students identified and practiced their own business plans. I was really impressed with their creativity, their thoughtfulness, and their ingenuity. And even though I had worked with youth a lot, I was really inspired by them to see them taking on these new leadership roles and using their voices. And I learned to be a better listener from them and to step out of the way, even when that process turns out totally different than I had expected. It was quite surprising to see what they came up with. The final artifact that I'd like to share with y'all is an interactive story map that depicts a tiny part of the reclamation process that we have started on the Tug Fork River. The Friends of the Tug Fork started out as just a few friends who liked to fish and share pictures of the river, and it has grown immensely to an impressive online and in-person community with over 20,000 members, like I mentioned. The reclamation part started out as pulling tires out of the river. I think we began in 2018. And from there, it has grown exponentially, and then we have started water quality sampling. And then even since I completed this story map, we have continued to ramp up. We incorporated as our own nonprofit. We formed a board of directors, and we recently became partners in a $2 million federal grant. We'll be hiring community engagement coordinators this year, and we are working on a 20-year comprehensive watershed plan for all 8 counties. So this has really been a clear sign of going to scale. So that has been really fun to see. This community resource mapping class actually turned out to be one of my favorites. I'm so grateful to have learned about this tool and been able to use it in communities. Thank you, Dan. Through my involvement with the Friends of the Tug Fork, I also learned a whole lot about water conservation and how to work closely with various audiences. Wanted to share a little bit now about my personal growth from after I completed all of my classes over the last 3 years. Finally got the opportunity to go on a residential trip to Vietnam in January to travel. So this experience really solidified what I had been learning and practicing in my own communities, but this time I was able to see new perspectives and hear more stories and see seed scale in action in new contexts. So from West Virginia, traveled to California first, and from that process, I learned to think globally and act locally. For me, actually, the scariest part was the flying alone. But once we got there, we were all smiles. Our first stop was Ho Chi Minh City. Here, we got to know our fellow classmates and professors. We learned history and context for the rest of our trip. And then, as we continued to the Mekong River Delta, we witnessed a waterway that was integral to farming, transportation, industry, and so many aspects of daily life. We also learned how many of those are in danger because of rising sea levels, lower river water levels, sand dredging, pollution, other issues. And Future Generations alumni and other community partners welcomed us to their communities. They shared with us their work in education, agriculture, and community development. We visited Gunta University, a local high school, an organic farm, ecotourism sites, and much more. Each offered its own unique lens and helped build a story of a post-war, post-industrial society currently facing change and development on many, many levels. So with focuses on education, environmental conservation, hospitality, youth, ecotourism, and water and river reclamation, I've seen parallels and similarities in Vietnam, at home in West Virginia, and from my classmates around the world. I've adopted and adapted new ideas. Our communities have built on successes and incorporated new partnerships. We have faced challenges and stumbling blocks. We have overcome hardships, and we have sometimes needed to reroute. But most importantly, we have listened, questioned, grown, and changed. So in conclusion, just a few values and visions that I'd like to share with you. I believe that becoming a better listener and watchers in our communities, we can then better facilitate community change. I learned this from my middle school students who are full of surprises every year. Here we are listening and sharing our mini compost projects. Without really getting to know a place and a people first, we are unable to act with compassion, confidence, support, and success. I learned this from my teen girls who I've watched grow up into the young women that they are now. And here we are back to school shopping last year. I have learned to observe and to ask questions. Since beginning to earn my master's degree at Future Generations, I've attempted to be a better listener, watcher, and observer in a community before I attempt to offer suggestions, solutions, or my own opinions. Here we are listening and learning at Abavina, an organic farm in Gunta, Vietnam. The value of becoming a web watcher before becoming a web weaver was something that I learned during the Vietnam residential trip. I realized that it had already been important to me, but not something that I had articulated. We talked a lot about this and the theory towards the end of our residential trip. And then recently, I saw this spider web and I was reminded of it. Another important theme that I'd like to include is the danger of a single story. It has become clear to me how important it is to learn and listen to different perspectives. This I learned even more deeply during my time this past January in Vietnam from Professor Dan Wessner and from my fellow classmates and our Vietnamese colleagues and alumni as we constantly gained more and more stories and perspectives in the Mekong River Delta. I feel so grateful to my experience with Future Generations. I never expected to go back to school or to earn a master's degree, but I'm so very glad that I did and that I've been able to be supported and encouraged here. This process of compiling my Spotlight portfolio and my broader master's portfolio has been very eye-opening. I've made connections and been reminded of projects and artifacts that I had forgotten. One thing that I've been really surprised by is how proud I am to showcase my work. I'm really proud of my communities and all of the positive change that they have experienced. It feels really good to be able to share that with y'all. So thank you so much for your time and for your listening. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Grace. We have time for one, maybe two questions. From my perspective, Grace, thank you. Again, it's what I was looking for, and I love the way you and Kimberly presented things very differently, showing different points of view with, having had basically same courses and same framework. Your application is different. Great. Questions? Okay, there are no hands. Grace, if you want to stop sharing. And if there are no last comments, we have Alexis up next. Grace, there's some comments in the chat for you.
Alrighty. Good morning, everyone. I appreciate everyone who's been here and all the students for listening. It's been really awesome to see your projects so far. So this morning I'm going to share a little bit about mine. I'm going to start with some slides to give you some context. My journey through Future Generations jumped around a lot to different positions and different environmental concepts. So I just wanted to guide us through before we jump into my portfolio. So I started at Future Generations University as an AmeriCorps serviceman member in Knoxville, Tennessee in 2018. I was fresh out of college and not sure what I was going to do with my life, but AmeriCorps really allowed me to step into monitoring stormwater and doing environmental work while also gaining real world experience. And I really appreciated that, and it shaped how I stepped into my studies at Future Generations University. So I was able to enroll in the seed scale course and explore what that meant from a service perspective. And then I moved from Tennessee to Arizona and moved into the Arizona Department of Transportation, which I think if I hadn't had that seed scale course at FGU, I would be thinking of ADOT as kind of a hard place to create change and a little bit not where I belonged as an environmental professional. But understanding bridging the gaps and exploring environmental concepts and what seed scale means really inspired me to create change in a transportation agency in Arizona. So I ended my time in 2024. I'm now an environmental program administrator. So I oversee a team of 20 doing environmental conservation as well as landscape work. And I also dabble in homeless response and resources with our city stakeholders. So my motivation for entering the graduate program was I was really inspired by being able to experience a global education, going on to a class in the morning and being able to visit and talk with people from all over the world was an amazing experience. Also, the service aspect, I think we all have a similar mindset that we're here to make a difference. And that was really empowering no matter where I went, Arizona or Tennessee, to have that perspective throughout my education. And then probably the biggest one was sustainability initiatives. That's whether I knew what I was doing or not with my career, I knew I wanted a sustainability aspect, and future generations really promised that no matter what change concept you were learning, what course you were in, there was a sustainable aspect that you're discussing. So that really appealed to me. And then being able to apply principles in real time to my career development, I was constantly taking things I discussed in class that morning and jumping on something that I applied to in the afternoon. And that was just a really important way to keep me going as far as creating change in my community. And it also added perspective. You can get bogged down with all the little things, especially in a public agency. There's a lot of red tape, for lack of a better word, and having classmates and having these discussions brought me back into a bigger world thought and kept me out of stressing over the little things. So just a quick overview of what courses I took. So some of my favorites, the community resource mapping, which Grace talked a little bit about already, that really added on to my existing mapping skills. And then sustainable communities, talking about what incentivized people to make sustainable choices. I still use those skills today. And then I did some independent studies to continue my mapping and the sustainable discussion. I also really enjoyed our strategic communications course, talking about communication plans and how to incentivize and communicate effectively was really important to me. And then bottom-up economics really brought all of the courses into one big project that I really enjoyed. And then continuing on with some of the AmeriCorps service, I was able to work with other AmeriCorps students to come up with a policy or potential policy. And that was just a really cool way to reflect on my AmeriCorps service, even though it had been years after I actually served in AmeriCorps. So that was an awesome and unexpected aspect of my education. And then leadership and community building, I was able to take on that role right as I got this current position and was becoming a leader in my career as well. So those aspects that I learned, those discussions I had, gave me the confidence to kind of step into the position I have today. And then the last one, the portfolio, which is this great summary that you're seeing right now. So stepping into my community, I work in the operations department of the Department of Transportation. It's about 300 people that work in construction and maintenance projects. It's a very reactive environment. So we get the projects from development or we get issues out on the roadway. We're reacting to those environments. So my education with FGU really inspired me to work with my community to become more preventative instead of reactive. And that's really what I took away from working with my community on these concepts. Overall, their mission is to increase the safety and condition of the roadway, and I also share that mission. And I just worked environmental concepts into ways that we could do that better, and then also keep everyone more safe. And I really am still inspired by the public service aspect of my community. Everyone's here ready to make a difference and work for a bigger purpose, and that makes change a little bit easier. Okay, so some highlights of what I'll show you in my portfolio. From the project management perspective, there were a few big projects that I worked on. This is the first one, working with invasive species. So this is kind of something that is also incorporated into the maintenance of our freeways, but learning how we could do that in a more preventative way. So I designed a project to kind of promote the ecological health of our shoulders with native plants, and then how that prevented the establishment of invasive species. And from that project, I was able to secure a grant that allowed us to try this out and look at fire safety and how reducing these invasive species prevented wildfires, which is very important to the safety of the roadway as well as Arizona residents. And then another big aspect is the educational tools that I was able to develop through the mapping course, the community resource mapping, and also my independent study. So I came out at the end of those two classes with a really cohesive website where anyone of the 300 people in my community could go in and kind of refresh themselves on some of the concepts that they need to apply every day. So that's one of the other big deliverables I got for my classes. All right, so we're gonna move into the portfolio. And I always do the screen share wrong, so let me fix that real quick, sorry. All right, so are we seeing the portfolio?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, thanks. All right, so this is what my portfolio ended up looking like. This is the introduction page where I kind of gave an overview of what I've just talked about in the slides and what this education meant to me. The photo in the top right, depending on how it's showing, is one of my favorites because it's so beautiful, but it's also a spill from a wastewater treatment plant that I responded to. So it's all how you spin it, I guess. And I just love that photo. And then the bottom photo is working on a construction site in one of our more environmentally complicated areas. We did a lot of conservation for saguaros, which are very important to Arizona, and trying to restrict our impact on the surrounding area. Okay, so then I move into our learning objectives. We did the learning matrix to go over all the objectives for what we were supposed to learn. So each page goes through one aspect of my education and what that meant to me, and then the artifacts for how I applied it. So this one, I actually compared the first project I did with building a partnership for our AmeriCorps governing bodies. Sorry. And then I compared my taking impact to scale project at the end of my education that looked at an Adopt a Highway program and building partnerships through that program. So I really liked comparing those two to see where I came from and how I ended the program.
10 minutes.
Thank you. And then I have my resume, which goes through my experience and then highlights the key themes that I wanted to focus on for this portfolio, which is how I applied community development, the program improvements, and the environmental training that I went through with you all. So that's kind of called out on this page. And then I go into more depth on the program improvements. So this one I already talked about a little bit with the shoulder restoration and invasive monitoring program I worked on, and that I go into detail about what that grant meant and the final plan that I worked on in communication course for how to share this plan with the rest of my community and what that looked like. And then the bottom one is that another program improvement. So I moved into the Adopt a Highway program, and going into a program I had really no experience with, and then becoming the manager of it was quite a process. But I was able to use my scale course to look at the improvements that had happened thus far, what had worked, what had not worked. And I actually now have a team of 3 people that put a lot of work and energy, not only into just allowing people to adopt segments along our roadways, but also building those relationships. So we actually built a relationship with Habitat for Humanity, which is, if you see the Tree Care Plaza up here on the top, it's a park that was owned by ADOT and kind of fell into disrepair. We're not really in the business of maintaining parks, but we definitely saw the community needed one, and there's a elementary school right next to it. So we wanted to look at how can we create a more educational environment in this park while also making it a little bit easier to maintain. So we partnered with Habitat for Humanity, and going forward, we're going to look at options for how to restore that park, which was really exciting. And I think knowing that I can build those partnerships with this program really has made it a lot more successful in just the first year that I've taken it on. And then I just highlighted my AmeriCorps service and the independent study I did to kind of analyze what's the benefit of AmeriCorps and how does it relate to an education at future generations. So this is a little bit about that. And then this is the educational tools that I created. They're interactive, so you can link into the story map. And kind of the difference between Arizona and some of the other areas we talked about this morning, water and visualizing water quality issues is not as easy because most of our river bottoms are dry the majority of the year. So I kind of wanted to take what I learned from doing stormwater quality in Tennessee and apply it in Arizona and really help my community visualize, okay, you don't see the water go from point A to point B. Well, what does that look like and how does it impact us as Arizonans? So that's kind of what's kicked off my educational tools. And then I also built ones for hazardous waste, which is another environmental concept we work on. Conserving biological species, what does that look like? And then the middle segment is our environmental management for a construction project. So I actually went in and did a presentation about applying it to their specific project and what does that look like going forward. So it made it easier for them to visualize what they needed to look for day to day. And then the last one is kind of a microplastics project that I worked on in response to the water quality presentation I'd been doing in our district office. So our administration team, we talked about a lot of the water bottle use that we have throughout our central Phoenix area. And one, how much of a cost increase that is, and two, how unnecessary it is, and then also how environmentally harmful it is. So I did this little handout to kind of educate everyone in our community about what water bottle use is, what are microplastics, and how to reduce that. And actually, like two out of the 7 offices I've worked with have replaced their water bottle use with a drinking fountain that's filtered and these big Yeti jugs that they take out into the field with them. So that was kind of something I didn't really anticipate, but by working on all these education tools with FGU, people really bought into this project. So. And then just to conclude, this is my spotlight collection. The key themes that I really focused on that were also my motivation for entering the master's program was leadership, sustainability, service, and communication. And so I highlighted each way that how I started out. So leadership, for example, when I was an AmeriCorps member, I was acting as a volunteer, and now I oversee a team of 20. And just that growth as far as leadership goes is really shown in how I progressed and how I developed my leadership portfolio at FGU. So, and then I highlight sustainability. Of course, that's a big aspect. I was able to present my independent study project. So that's linked here to kind of overview all those things I worked on as far as conservation and in the Department of Transportation. And then service, this is a picture of my AmeriCorps team. Obviously, it started out with water quality and restoration, and I still do that every day, no matter how my no matter how my education has changed. So yeah, and then I just kind of summarized what I want to do moving forward. I will be moving into a homeless response position where I'm actually working with city stakeholders and how they outreach and work with those experiencing homelessness in our right of way and who shelter in our structures and what that looks like. And I'm going to use my tools at Future Generations to do that. So I'm very excited to see where my education and this experience takes me. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. We've got time for one question. Chris, and we have one hand.
Thank you. I was curious, Alexis, great presentation. And I'm very excited about your new area that you're going to be focusing on. I was curious about, did you find that there was aspects of seed scale that was already present in the way that the DOT works? And were there like bridges that you had to make, and what were those, if you had to make any bridges?
Yeah, so it's funny you say that because I really hadn't looked at that really deeply until I did this portfolio. And Arizona, they have a continuous improvement system where it kind of tracks what our employees implement and then how can we scale that up around the state. So that was kind of the version of seed scale for the department at the time. And I think I really learned that I needed to bridge the gap between what someone like benefits from as far as improvement and how we can increase that and make it attractive to more people. So a lot of the times people would have these improvements and they just sit in a database because it wasn't as applicable. And a lot of the people utilizing that program were not the employees that would use it. They were just the consultants that we had kind of hired to do this job, right? So I think me taking that system and looking at what people had implemented that could be environmentally related, then I could instantly take that and say, okay, this is how you benefited the environment. This is how we can make it a little bit more applicable around the state. So that was a really interesting thing that I hadn't really thought about from this perspective until I did my portfolio. So yeah.
Thank you, Alexis. Ivy, you've got exactly 18 minutes and you have a hard stop, so go for it. Thank you, Alexis. Once again, a very different from the same program, a very different presentation with different approaches. Like it. Go ahead, Ivy.
Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So welcome to my portfolio and spotlight collection in one website. The first page is just a little bit about me. I have a brief elevator pitch / welcome to my page on the right-hand side. And then this just is kind of like to summarize everything as far as like my digital CV, Future Generations experiences, but then I go into my graduate projects and then service projects. So on the top, I have my digital CV, which is just kind of highlighting my experiences, some skills I have, my education, expertise, and also certifications. For my Future Generations learning experience, I will say this, well, my spotlight collection, or I guess like experience as a student, is a little bit different. I notice a lot of my classmates have like a program they've been working on. In my case, since I was doing AmeriCorps at the time, I kind of have like several projects I was working on. So it feels a little bit different. But my journey actually started with Peace Corps. On the right-hand side is my host mom, Nune. She had a beautiful garden and probably the best Armenian teacher I had as well. And then after pandemic, I was evacuated, or right at the start of the pandemic, I was evacuated and I came back and I wasn't entirely sure what I had planned on doing. And so I ended up one day, I was like, you know what, I'll just go back to school because I really enjoyed doing the community work that I had done in Peace Corps. My program was community and youth development, and so I had learned a little bit about monitoring and evaluation and program development. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. And getting evacuated, I never really got a chance to see some of the things I had been working on come to light. And so I was really interested in learning like more about that. And so I also ended up doing AmeriCorps as well. I was on the volunteer infrastructure project, or VIP as they would call us. The first place I was at United Way, and I assisted with the volunteer income tax assistance or RIDA program. And then my second term was at the Village Project Inc., and that focused on mental health in underserved community members, which I thought was amazing. And so a lot of my education came from hands-on, but guided with future generations. Some of the strengths I saw in this program overall was that because I did AmeriCorps at the same time, I was able to directly apply a lot of the seed scale principles right into the work I was doing, which is really great. And the projects themselves also helped me get outside of my comfort zone and really just take a deeper dive into like the inner workings of nonprofits and community work. I guess like one of the downsides though is because I was constantly working on different projects or in different organizations, I didn't really get to see a lot of the projects I started really come to completion or fruition. But I did learn a lot of hands-on knowledge. But I will say overall, doing both AmeriCorps and also grad school at the same time was very exhausting. Yeah, both mentally and emotionally exhausting. But it was still, I have no regrets. So from learning reflections I have from the classes, I definitely go over a little bit more in depth in my Spotlight collection. But then here I have my learning matrix about the different learning objections for future generations and how I saw them play out in the different courses I took. And then for each one of those, I have an artifact or a sample of my work for each of those learning objectives, where anyone reviewing it can see how I was able to take that learning objective and work on it deeper in the classes that I took. Yeah, and then for the Spotlight collection, I took a deeper dive into the things I came across. I feel like this Spotlight collection specifically is great for anyone who is considering being a grad student, but they're not entirely sure how being a student will benefit them. It may be, such as myself, not entirely sure where it will take them, but they're just interested in the journey itself. And so this kind of showcases that journey that I've gone through. I have some practical skills and valuable insights that I gained, as well as some of my values that I saw reflected in the courses, and then some of the gain values from the classes. And this little graph here just kind of highlights that overall. So different insights I got. And then in here, I also mentioned AmeriCorps, because as I mentioned, I was in AmeriCorps at the time, kind of how I got direct skills from the classes, but then also how AmeriCorps played a part. Like for instance, this one from the Intro to Community Change, I was able to create the program outline for a program I was working on, which is a skill, but it was also something that directly correlated with my AmeriCorps service. And then I kind of go into a little deeper on the skills gained, showcasing that artifact from the different classes and talking about which class that came from and the thing I learned from it. Some of them I do showcase in my graduate projects, so I do link them to that specific page. Not all of them do I have on my graduate projects because I didn't catalog everything, which I realized was a big mistake. But insights I gained from the courses as well, I do share. Like for instance, I'm not a researcher. I thought at some point I could be, but doing the social or research methods class, I created a wonderful proposal. But I realized that's not me. I really enjoyed taking that class, and I like the amount of work that goes into community change, and I like how social research could be used for community change, but I also recognize that the amount of academic journals and scholarly articles that you have to read, it's just not for me. So that was really insightful. And then last but not least, the 2 pages I have are my graduate projects. So the artifacts I chose a couple of the most complete artifacts from my courses and highlighted each of them. They all were inspired, well, the first 2 at least were inspired by my AmeriCorps service. And then I have my Peace Corps projects, which were ones I did during Peace Corps. For instance, we did a practicum while we were still in our pre-service training. And so I highlighted that and just kind of showcased a little bit about what we did, and then our project outline, as well as we had some videos that we took of the event, and so we also put the videos up here. So like I said, mine feels a little different because I had been, I guess, like stirring several pots at the same time. But there were some overall commonalities in a lot of the classes, which I did kind of go through and highlight in the Spotlight collection itself. So, any questions?
Yes, Paula, go ahead.
Ivy, so as one of our more, I think you have been fully distant or fully remote this entire time. How has that been for you? How do you feel connected to the institution, I guess, is my question.
I think I will say, at least being fully remote, I think that's been really helpful in terms of being able to still connect with other students. But I also feel connected in that, like, for instance, Alexis also did AmeriCorps, and so like there's a class that the 2 of us partnered together, and we got to share about our AmeriCorps experiences, which like I found out about Future Generations through Peace Corps, but also there's a lot of connections with AmeriCorps as well because of the Coverdell program. And so like I feel connected with students like through some of the smaller projects, because a lot of us have not the exact same paths, but similar enough paths that it's still like one huge cohort, I guess.
Well, and from my perspective, Ivy, again, a very, very different take on your process through the Future Generations program. Very interesting. I have to look at it again in detail, but I was taken up by the illustration that you had, including value gained, which is something that we haven't particularly discussed, and you've added there. So I'll have to have a look at that particular illustration you have.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Hello, everyone, and warm greetings from Nepal. I'm Bindu Pun, and now I'm going to present my Spotlight collection. First of all, introducing myself. I'm a public health practitioner. I have completed a bachelor degree in public health with health science background. So my background is primarily being a public health, but through this master program, I have developed a strong interest in a holistic approach to health, and I have started thinking the other aspect, other field that directly or indirectly help to the health. As we know that health is a cross-cutting issue, and this program has helped me to build the knowledge for that. And for this purpose of Spotlight collection, I consider my community to be the organization that I'm working for. Currently, I'm working as a research and training officer for an NGO, and its name is Bhaskar Tesri Memorial Foundation. And I have been working here for last 3.5 years. To talk about the major our working areas, we are working for the prevention of non-communicable disease risks and gender-based sexual harassment. And to address these critical issues, we have designed two research-based experiential learning modules. And I should mention that our organization and we are dedicated for the well-being and safety of young population, especially school-going adolescent. So for the empowering purpose, the training modules we have is, the first one is experiential learning module for prevention of non-communicable disease risk factor. As we all know that the major non-communicable disease risk factors are tobacco, alcohol, and junk food consumption, physical inactivity, and mental stress. So in this learning package, we have developed separate 5 learning modules to deal with these non-communicable disease risk factors, so that our adolescents can be protected from these risk factors and ultimately to reduce the chance of non-communicable disease in later on in their future time. The another learning materials is the experiential learning modules to prevent gender discrimination and sexual harassment. For that, similar to the non-communicable disease risk factor, we have 2 separate learning modules to prevent the gender discrimination and sexual harassment. And you can see the main component I have kept here in the slide. So now I would like to share the journey, how I started in Future Generations University. The first of all, I knew about this course from my executive director, Professor Dr. Rita Thapa. She is also a research faculty member for Future Generations University. So I got to learn about this master program from her. And the situation was, I began my position as a research and training officer at the Bhaskar Tesri Memorial Foundation with minimal prior working experiences. Continuing with my journey with this organization, I enroll in this master program and am nearing its completion. So my professional role in Bhaskar Tesri Memorial Foundation and the academic journey in Future Generations University are molding me into a competent public health practitioner. Future Generations University is providing me with the learning opportunities, while Bhaskar Tesri Memorial Foundation is offering me a platform to apply the knowledge and skills I have required from this master program. So I feel lucky that I'm learning some new things and I'm applying those new learnings in my practice to make myself competent in my role. So to share my study theme, considering my organizational role and my personal interest also, my study theme throughout this master program has been adolescent empowerment, how we can empower the adolescent using the knowledge and skills I'm learning from the university. And the major working areas are, again, preventing non-communicable disease risks and sexual harassment. Why I'm choosing these 2 areas is basically I'm working for an organization, and I'm also acquiring some of the skills and knowledge with it. So I was thinking to apply my knowledge and skills in the same field that I'm working now. So this is it. And to share my courses that have enrolled throughout this master program are till date, I have completed 8 courses and 2 residential program. Residentials program from India to learn the Gandhian method to make the change that you wish to see was the theme. And another one was the Nepal residential itself in my home country, and it was especially related to the application of city scale. And through this Nepal residential, we could see how the city scale approach is developing our community, especially in the rural areas. And one internship I will share about it in later on. So applying learning into action. The first activity I would like to share is related to empowering school adolescents to prevent non-communicable disease risk factor. To conduct this program, we are using city scale principles. Like you can see here, we are starting and building from the success, mobilizing already trained human resources that we have from the previous working experiences. And the three-way partnership is one of the major principles for our work. We are working as a outside to fulfill the need from the bottom up, especially the need of school-going adolescent, utilizing our technical expertise with top-down financial support. The most important aspect in this this program conduction is that we are conducting those programs in cost-sharing partnership with local government for the ownership and sustainability purpose. And in the next principle, evidence-based decision making, I have already shared with you all that we are utilizing research-based training modules to empower more and more young generations for the same to change the behavior, especially related to non-communicable disease, and to protect the young adolescents from gender-based sexual harassment, to conduct the sexual harassment risky behavior. And in the left-hand side, you can see one of the picture that relates with the experiential learning to feel the long-term effect of one of the NCD risk factor, tobacco consumption. And we are in the phase of scaling up. For that, we are developing training hubs. And for that, we have already master trainers, and we are mobilizing those master trainers to train more school teachers so that we can expand our impactful program to the new schools as well. And now I'm in one of the remote area of my country, a mountainous region far from the capital city. And I must say, after enrolling in this master program, my interest in working in the rural area with marginalized communities has been increased. This change is likely due to approaches we are learning and their impact on the community change, especially rural development for the sustainable development. So now I am where I am is the rural area, but I'm happy that I am applying the learnings from this program. So this is about the partnership program, and we are making partners with medical college to build them as a training hubs for their catchment area. As you have already informed that we are doing the preventive work, and for that, we are mobilizing medical students to train the more younger generation. That it is also like that we are increasing the number of trainers by making partners with the medical college.
10
And
minutes gone.
and we are collaborating with the Nepal Army to reach out the more young generations. So this picture is from the residential, which I have already shared. This is one of the favorite, approach from this university, that we got the opportunity to learn from the classmate, meeting professors in person and seeing real community action. We also got to see the city scale work and compare it with other projects, how it differs and how it acts. So integrating my learnings with my current role as executive director is also one of the research faculty at Future Generations University. We are trying to utilize city scale principles in each of our projects. However, the city scale course has empowered me to understand these principles closely and apply them in a meaningful way. I have understood the importance of following the 7 tasks, and which is helping us improving our organizational performance. We have research-based project, and as a young researcher and a trainer, the research methodology course has enhanced my knowledge, and especially the qualitative research method. I have only few knowledge. Just to I was able to define what is qualitative research method, but after taking this course, now I can conduct the qualitative research, and this also provided the skill to analyze the qualitative data. So I'm happy with this course. In the role of my research and training officer, knowledge and skills related to monitoring and evaluation are crucial. So developing a theory of change for the project activities was new to me. Before the course, our focus was primarily on the participatory implementation, but now I understand the importance of participatory planning and evaluation as well. And we are applying for the research grant, and one of the required proposal content was that the theory of change, which I learned only after enrolling in the monitoring and evaluation course. So if we relate with the previous activities in my organization, our project manager position is backend. So I'm working directly under the executive director and also performing some managerial role. So I'm leading project activities, and the leadership course has supported me in identifying my crucial roles and building my confidence. While conducting field-based training, we hire consultant trainers and now need to rely on their support. So the course has taught me the importance of teamwork, identifying the strength and weakness of our team members, and overall to manage the field activities as a team. So the overall reflection from my learnings is that I have a background in public health, and I'm passionate about the contributing to this field. However, this master program has inspired me to adopt the holistic approach to my work. The program has eliminated the many cross-cutting issues in health and deepened my understanding of community development and sustainable approaches. It has equipped me with essential knowledge and skills such as leadership, participatory monitoring and evaluation, and research, enabling me to perform my roles more effectively. So now I feel more empowered. Thank you so much for the time and attention.
Thank you, Bindu. Sorry to scare you there. I meant to remind people that I would say after 10 minutes had gone, but you did very well on the time. We have some minutes for questions. Chris?
Thank you. Hi, Bindu. Well done in your presentation. I had a question on the 2 modules that you had put together for the non-communicable diseases, and then also the gender-based harassment. I was curious about what's the delivery, how is it done? Did you put them together virtually, or are they modules that are taught to the trainers and then the master trainers, and then they teach them to others? Could you explain that a little bit?
Okay, Chris, thank you for your question. Actually, we have developed these two learning materials, training tools from the research, and it was, the community based. We went to different school physically to test these two tools, and after the years of experiment, the result showed that these different learning modules have enabled school adolescents to fight against these two issues. So we already know that these two training modules are working. So now we are in the phase of scaling up. So for that, we train our master trainer physically, and the master trainer go to the different community at the community level and train the teachers at the local level, and the teachers finally teach their student using the same method and the modules. And please let me know if I could answer your question or not.
No, that's exactly what I was looking for.
Kelly?
Thank you, Bindu. That was great. Did I understand you that you're in the middle of applying for a grant based on using the theory of change as your, what is it called?
Yeah, I understood. Yeah, I understood your question. Yes, there was a grant. The concept was there, and we have applied for the grant proposal, but the result has not been out yet. But definitely, I learned the theory of change from this course, and when I see the content, the requirement of the grant proposal, I was shocked, like, what is the theory of change? And then in the class we were talking about the same topic. So it has been helpful, but I don't know. I'm not sure that we are getting the grant, but
Right.
I can say that now I can develop the theory of change.
Yeah, that's a great, I'm so glad that you were able to take, your work environment and the things you were learning in class applied so well. That's a lovely thing to hear. And if you do, or even if you don't get the grant, it would be great to hear from you about that, because it just it gives us so much joy to hear that our students are being able to win these grants. So thank you for your presentation.
Okay, sure, Kelly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bindu. Well, Sheillah is up next. Thank you, Bindu. So go ahead and share your screen, Sheillah, and I'll let you know when 10 minutes are gone. There's a total of 18 minutes, including questions.
Okay, hello everyone. I believe you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, so all right. My name is Sheillah Mong'ute. I am from Kenya. I'm a counseling psychologist by profession and a very passionate one. I'm very passionate about matters mental health and community development as well. Currently, I'm undertaking my master's at FGU. And when you don't find me working or studying, I love aerobic training, dancing, and hiking as well. So for the courses that I've done, currently I've done and completed 9 courses. And currently I'm doing 2 that are ongoing, that is social research for social change. At this current course, which is synthesis and integration. So for my learning journey, I joined FGU in 2019, and basically growing up as a child, I was relatively quiet. So that means I wasn't so much into community and community development. So the first encounter I had with community work was when I joined my undergraduate. And as a class of psychology students, we participated in a number of community works, like visiting hospitals, rehabilitation, but most of them were just short term and they were not sustainable. So the time I actively started participating in community work is after my undergraduate, when I was employed in a local university called KISS University. And that is when I joined the scouts who are in the university, the student scouts. And they were actually doing a lot of community work and supporting the community. And I loved what they were doing. So I joined them, and that is when I actively started doing community work. That is also around the same time that I heard about this course in 2019, and I didn't think twice about joining it because I was also at a point where I was thinking of how best I can give back to community, because for me it has always been fulfilling to work with communities and seeing an impact or a positive change. So when I joined, it's also good to note that I've actually, since 2019 to date, I've been to 5 different communities in 5 very different regions in my country. So for me, it has been a blend of experience. And so I joined FGU when I was a student counselor at the KISS University. Later, in 2020, I moved to Samburu County, and Samburu are sort of Maasai. It's more like a Maasai community, and they're in a marginalized area. And then later, I moved to an organization that I stayed for like 3 months. I didn't stay there for long. So in between, around 2022, I took a break from this program. And around that time, I had an experience. We have an organization that my sister and I co-found. It's called Amandlamek. It focuses on empowering young girls and women. And during that time, I had an opportunity to apply most of the information I had learned from this course, as I'll be showing you later. And then currently, my current community is police officers. I work with them as a counseling psychologist, and we are in a county called Nakuru. So my vision, before I joined FGU, my vision was to provide or to just have an impact in communities. But now, as I joined the program, I plan to create a positive and long-lasting or sustainable impact in the best way I can. And I plan to use the values of trust, integrity, openness, and empathy, as well as compassion, to see changes in my community. So my seeds of scale, since I joined FGU in 2019, are focused on 3 seeds of scale, that is food security, climate change, and mental health. So my initial projects were on food security and climate change. And these ones I did with the scouts while I was still in KISS University. And it was really easy to work on these with these scouts because they already had the skills and they were trained. So I used the skills they already have to reach out to the community. My 3rd seed of scale was on mental health, and this is the one that I am focusing on. I started this when I went to Samburu, and I figured out the project could really help them. So, and I felt that also the knowledge I was gaining would be very fruitful in my profession. So, and it actually has been very helpful. So for mental health, it's more like I found my niche in community development, in what I really want to see changing the community. So this is what I'm currently working on and what I plan to keep working on. So my first community, the KISS University community, those are scouts. I had 3 projects, and this was definitely the first community that I worked with when I started off. So the first project, it's also good to note that Kisi community is my community by birth. So I sort of understood the challenges, and also I saw the changes that were happening, and part of the changes that were happening were on climate change, because over time people were cutting trees to use them for charcoal, which is also a main source of energy in this community. So one of the projects that I saw fit at that time was a project on making coal briquettes. And this aimed at reducing deforestation and the negative health consequences as a result of smoke that comes from the charcoal, because a number of women were complaining of chest problems because of using the charcoal a lot. So the briquettes are made from coal dust, soil, and water. You just mix them, and then you mold them and dry them in the sun. So once they are well dried, they are ready for use, and they don't have smoke effect as similar to charcoal, so they are also easy on health. So I had developed a work plan for this, and also partners we intended to approach. We hadn't done much on this. So the scouts would mold these coal briquettes, sell them at a very cheaper price as compared to charcoal. So it means they would also gain something from the project itself. But by the time I was leaving in 2020, we hadn't done much on it. So my second project was on vertical farming. And the target population, as you can see, they were students from the Kisi Vocational and Rehabilitation Center. Once in a while, I used to visit them and we just talk on matters mental health and just empowerment. And at some point, the instructors mentioned that they didn't have enough land to plant the vegetables and cater for their nutritional needs. And since scouts had been trained on vertical farming, we made it. We went to we trained them on the vertical farming, but at first we are the ones who did it for them as we were training them. And the vertical farming was more like improvising a standing garden so that it will use a very small space on the land, so it wouldn't take so much land, but the yield would be more. So it helped utilize a small piece of land for more vegetable yield. And training them actually made them happy. They were learning a new skill, and watering the vegetable gardens in the evening, they reported that it made them more busy, and they were really happy to do that. And this is one of the projects that is on until now, and it's really helping them. The third one was on beekeeping, chicken rearing, and fish farming. And for this project, this is a project that the scouts already had, but they had just one fish pond. For the beekeeping, they had 2 beehives. And so the objective of this project was also to support the needy scouts who needed monetary support, as well as improve the livelihoods of both the scouts and the local community members through producing food that was in high demand and affordable rate. So this was done through expanding the fish farm. By the time I was leaving, there were 3 ponds, and the number of fish that they were harvesting were more. And the sales definitely was bringing in more money. And then also the bee farming, we planned that we had local partners who came to train them and improve their knowledge about the market and how to keep the bees well. So for the 2 projects, they worked well. For the chicken farming, we were hoping the money we would pick from the beekeeping and fish farming, that is what we'll put into chicken rearing. And we are planning for the chicken rearing, we rear the ones that are easy to maintain, but they have high value. But for the chicken farming, it didn't manage to pick. So currently there are 2 projects that are still running.
10
So
minutes
the
gone.
achievements, all right. The achievements, the scouts managed to maintain the vertical farming, and the other 2 projects, beekeeping and fish farming, is ongoing. So for my second community, I focused on mental health. And this is where I moved in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic, and my role was to go there for psychosocial support for the COVID-19 related stress and anxiety. So this community, as I mentioned, it's marginalized, and it's one of sort of the forgotten communities. So I realized when I went there, we were two of us who were employed as psychologists. We were the first ever psychologists to get into that community. And I realized there was a very big gap in terms of mental health, because we realized that for them, they didn't understand what mental illness was, and they attributed it to a punishment or a curse from elders or witchcraft, and you had to be cleansed to heal. So, and this definitely really never worked, and family members would abandon the person and just leave them to roam in the streets because they didn't also want to be affected. So for them, they attributed mental illness to cultural issues. And I felt apart from handling the COVID-19 psychosocial support, it was very important to give them awareness on mental health and mental illness. And there were 3 lab artifacts that were very relevant to me. SEC 601, which is Introduction to Community Change. From this, I learned, and from this, I learned that on coming up with a work plan and objectives, an action plan and time frame needed to achieve the objectives. I also learned to come up with an LCC in this and a work plan, and this really worked to my advantage. PSK 602, Community Resource Mapping. Through Story Map, I focused on strategies of improving mental health status in Samburu. I learned to do a mental health status survey, which was helpful in identifying issues and possible solutions, and areas that members needed mindset change, and also SEC 603, which focused on action planning for scaling up. So also the lessons from other courses was very helpful. So for the mental health project, I trained community members to be psychosocial support providers, and this really helped in terms of referral and giving information to community members that you wouldn't reach in their own language. And over time, it proved to be very helpful. I also trained healthcare workers because most healthcare workers were not aware of the patients that needed psychosocial support. Also, through partnerships with the local NGOs, we managed to go around the whole county of Samburu and sensitize the members on matters mental health. These are some of the pictorials, and this second photos shows the Samburu adolescents when they were launching their youth manual. And I'm happy that in this manual, they actually agreed to integrate the mental health aspect, and it's one of the key areas they integrated. So these other photos are of me during the sensitizations. So some of my achievements here is that more community members started embracing mental health services, and there was an increase on number of community members seeking the services. We also had a great support from the county government, and they supported us in the first ever mental health awareness week. A number of NGOs adopted and integrated the aspect of mental health in their work plan also. So some of the achievements that were still ongoing even after I left, because I chose a strong LCC and they were very open and helpful. We had plans of reaching out to more community members in the most remote areas of Samburu through radio sessions. And these, the radio sessions actually picked, and they have mental health sensitizations through that. We have local students who are there in attachment, and after they graduated, they were actually employed because the county government felt the importance. There's also a number of increase of local students undertaking counseling psychology after the sensitization. We also worked on the integration framework, so mental health was added by NGOs and county government as well in most of the activities, and more trainings are still ongoing for capacity building. So yet to be achieved is building of rehabilitation center, because there are also a high number of drug issues, and also introduction of radio sports and drama in the local language. For this one, we're planning, because we felt it would be easy to reach out to the community members. It's something that it's also yet to be achieved. So for my third community, Amandlamek, the foundation that we co-found. We co-founded in 2019, but it became more active in 2022. And our aim is to economically empower marginalized women. And part of the reason that made us to actually do this is that there was a rising number of teenage pregnancies, and one major cause was financial instability. Young girls were left to cater for themselves, especially those in the slums, by their parents, and they were exchanging sex for simple things like food and sanitary towels. So Amandla, it's a Zulu word meaning power, and our thematic areas are economic empowerment, sexual reproductive health, and mental health. So for the main pillars, so far what we've implemented is the economic empowerment pillar, and we seek to ensure that women in informal settlements set up businesses, run and thrive in them. So our target audience is teenage mothers above 18 years, as well as young mothers and women below 29 years. So after the economic empowerment, after training them on economic empowerment, this is part of the curriculum. We also formed a women group whereby every week they contribute a specific amount of money, a very small amount of money, and you have a partnership with an organization that they save their money there, and after they have graduated, because we also graduate them, they're given triple the amount of money to start off their businesses. And now the money they give back part of the money, not all the amount, and the remaining amount is given for the next cohort. So far we've graduated. We've had one cohort that graduated, and we graduated 11 students, and we have 7 businesses running. The organization also supports the young women in giving them material support. So if they want material for their business, they're given material but not the finances. We also focus on sexual reproductive health pillar, but we haven't implemented it yet. And as well as the mental health pillar, because we realize that being a young mother in those marginalized areas, their mental health is always at stake. And if they're not mentally healthy, even the economic empowerment won't work. So
Sheila, your time is up, I'm afraid. So would you like a final comment or conclusion?
okay, so I look at the cross analysis through my. So I can compare the similarities in my 4 communities as well as the differences. So I picked similarity in seed scale methodology. Using the 4 principles of sustainability, I saw the need to integrate and understand the community, ensuring inclusivity and sustainability. Using of the LCC as well, I've used it across all the communities I've worked with, and it has really worked. Human energy also is most important. The themes in my projects, most of them are similar, and most of them are on mental health. The differences, I've worked in different regions, different challenges faced by different communities. So how the course has impacted my work, that is probably what I'll finish with. Most of the communities that I've actually worked with, I was the first professional to hold the mental health department. And that means somehow I was responsible for creating most of the structures and ensuring everything ran successfully. I was a pioneer of 3 of my communities, that is Samburu, Amandla, as well as the last community which I haven't looked at, which is the police officers. And that means most of them have started from scratch. And this course has really come in handy in providing me with the needed skills to identify where to start from. And I believe being a pioneer in these communities really worked to my advantage, as I have practically applied the knowledge gained from the course, and I have actually witnessed it work. And I'm very grateful and appreciate the experience that I've gained from the course.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. And I'm sorry that there's not time for question. And but you can write to her directly or chat send a chat maybe while we're getting organized. Next up is Padam. So you can be sharing your screen, Padam. And thank you very much, Sheillah.
Have you seen my screen?
Yes, Padam. It's not full screen.
Yeah.
Click on the screen at the bottom. Not full screen yet.
Not screen?
Not full screen. Just at the bottom. There's about the bottom there.
Yeah, okay. Look, just a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Dancer, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, I want to introduce myself. I am Padam Bishwakarma. I am from Nepal and I belong to the disadvantaged community of Nepal. You know about the community of Nepal. They are marginalized since the many years. Even they have been facing the discrimination problem in schools, in public spaces, and the many many areas. Yeah, I have connected with Future Generation University in 2022. Especially, I was looking for a course which could support my career. Then I Googled and I found the Future Generation University, and then I joined with Future Generation University in 2022. Yeah, my previous education background was I have completed master's degree from Nepal, and I have a little bit engaged in research like socio-economic condition of Saki community in Nepal. Especially, it was conducted to fulfill my master's degree in sociology. As we all know, Nepal's education system is less practical. I could say less practical. It's theory-based education system. This course was help. The Future Generation course is helping me to in practical way, and I have involved in the practical session like in different areas. It was a theoretical education system, but somehow it has supported in my professional life. Yeah, my professional involvement, initially I worked for Habitat Nepal, which is a Swiss non-governmental organization. I engaged with UNDP and the UNOPS as well. They are the UN agencies. What I would like to share here is, especially I could not directly connected with the community as my professional role, because my beneficiary is provincial government, local government, and the development partners funded by the British Embassy, Nepal. So it's difficult for me to directly implement the project to share the project which I carried out for the community. Although as a course, I had to develop a proposals, grant proposals, M&D plan, and so that's I have developed the plan, and through the other non-governmental organization, I have submitted the proposals to the Helvetas Nepal, and the NGO which I selected for the non-profit management course is implementing the program for the marginalized community. Yeah, this is my community. They all are from Dalit community, as you know. It's their economic status and how they are facing the discrimination in the community. Yeah, master's program, and I have completed the 8 subjects. 2 subjects is ongoing, and I have participated in the Nepal residential program. Altogether, I will complete the 10 subjects by this June, and including excluding 1 Nepal residential program. Yeah, master's program specialization. Yes, more practical course. This is the more practical course, and it has contributed for the social change in the community. What I realized after joining this course, the applied community development course will especially focus on sustainable development, sustainable development. And I especially worked for the Dalit community of Nepal, who are marginalized and from the many years in the society. And I have developed the proposal. I have coordinated with the local government, and they are planning to implement the project that I submitted to the local government. We can say municipalities. Here is the response of municipalities. I have presented here. This is the screenshot of that response. From this knowledge, from this course, I gained lots of knowledges on community. Especially, I have to interact with the community. I have to develop the proposal. I have to coordinate with different stakeholders involved in developing, drafting MID plans, like these things. So it has provided me the very good opportunity to enhance my skills. What I achieved during this course is I already shared with all of you, directly connected with the community. Yes, I have to interact with the community, and understand it has helped me to understand the community in deeper way. In Nepal residential program, we spent more than 11 days in the community, and we have interacted with the different community of Nepal, where the organization, the different 3-4 organization has applied the CD scale in the community. It has provided the great opportunity to learn about the practical use of CD scale in the community. Another way, I worked with the non-profit organizations in many years, but I never drafted the proposal. But after this course, I have drafted the proposal, submitted to the municipalities, and the municipality is going to implement those projects. It started from the 2 municipality of the lake. I have where I have submitted the proposals, and the municipality is committed to implement that project, and hope they will implement. And if I have got an opportunity to share with you, and I will share you in the next settings. The another achievements is MID plan. Yes, I worked as a monitoring sector, but I didn't get the opportunity to draft the MID plan. We have utilized the plan developed by the senior level staffs. So in this course, monitoring and evaluation course, I directly involved drafting the MID plan with the support of our respected dancer, and it has enhanced my knowledge in MID as well, like research skills. And from the leadership, the course has supported me to enhance the leader, how we can lead or mobilize the community, how we can lead the organization, what kind of methodology or what kind of strategy we need to apply during the leadership and collaboration. In these types of skills, I learned from this course. And the another is CD scales. In CD scale approach, I learn about the CD scale. So what I learned from this course is major things is without donors funding, we can do something for the community. And the integration of learning, especially we learned from, I have been learning from the 2022, the course synthesis and integration has provided the opportunity that what we learn and how we can integrate the learnings. These types of knowledge I have gained in from this course. Yeah, my future goals is I will continue my work with international or non-government organizations in coming days as well, and my focus will be will be on the community-driven initiatives, which I learned from this course, and especially focusing on the poor and marginalized community of Manali province, Nepal. And I will coordinate with the local government, provincial government, and especially to successfully implement the project. And my contribution will be to empower the marginalized community, especially Dalit community of Nepal. This is the conclusion. I am on the last slide. Yeah, my commitment is to apply community development approach, and I will be very dedicated to empowering future generations and driving sustainable change. And this course is the milestone for community development. Thank you. That's all from my side. If you have any questions, I'll try to. I will be happy to answer. Thank you. Over to you, Dancer.
Thank you, Padam. It was exactly 10 minutes. There's Kelly, you've raised your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you, Padam. I'll let you figure out the slide sharing, how to stop sharing. Or I can, oh, sorry. I'll give you a minute.
Stop sharing. Yeah.
Thank you. Padam, that's great work. I was just wondering if you, and sorry to put you on the spot like this, it sounds like you're continuing, and I noticed this in Sheillah's work as well, the integration of environmental work and community development work. Do you have an example from your time, either before you were in the program or within the program, that you feel like those two, how community development and sustainable, the idea of taking care of the environment, how those two things have kind of come together for you, personally or professionally?
Especially professionally, as I already shared, my role was not directly connected with the community, just worked for the provincial government and the implementing partners of the British government, Nepal. But yeah, integration of sustainable development and the environmental aids. Yeah, I have experienced that. For the UNDP has launched the Nepal Climate Change Support Program. During that period, I got the opportunity to learn about it, but I directly not involved in that program.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Right. I did. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
But I wanted to ask, during your studies with us, what has been the biggest change that you've seen in working with your community? Specifically, how the programming has affected your work with them?
From which program? Sorry.
From in your studies with Future Generations University,
yeah,
as you've been looking at how what you've learned is affecting how you work with your community, what would you say is the largest change you've noticed in your personal work with the community?
Yes, it has really supported in my professional career. As I already mentioned, I have enhanced the knowledge of monitoring and evaluation. Yes, I already mentioned you I directly not connected with the beneficiary, like community or groups. My role was to work with provincial government and the development partner of British Embassy. So it has supported me to track to support the government in developing monitoring plans. How we plan how we develop the plans, especially in the budget of planning budget coordination with how we can coordinate with non-governmental organizations so that they could contribute to the government's priority areas. then I was able to support to the provincial government. It means the course of future generations really helped me in my professional career.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly, did you have a follow-up question?
Well, Padam, I was going to say you keep sort of apologizing for the fact that you don't work directly with the community. But I think that our program, and maybe you have some reflection on this too, the idea behind the program is, yes, it appeals to people that are working directly with community members, but we also want to appeal to people that are in your position where you're having to make sort of bigger or be part of bigger decision making that directly affects the community. So do you feel like the program, do you feel like the program is a good fit for someone sort of what do we call, civil servant like yourself in provincial and government roles? And is there somewhere we can strengthen the program to support students like yourself?
Yes. It has supported. I closely worked with the government. That's why I coordinated with them, and I supported to them to plan for the marginalized and Dalit community. After that, the provincial government has started the program for the lead community of Karnali province. Yes, because I closely had to work with the chief minister's office. So yes, it has supported to implement the program or to allocate the budget for the marginalized community so that they could improve their livelihood and the other aspects.
I mean, that sounds great to me that you were able to affect, these lines of these budget lines, which it doesn't sound sexy, but it definitely makes a big difference in community work. So thank you for all you do. Does anyone else have a question?
Actually, the time is up.
Sorry,
Dan.
Dan.
But we have a situation because I have Rachel's presentation here, but it looks like Rachel has not been able to join. Are you there, Rachel? Am I just not seeing you? Thank you, Padam. Let's see if we can get Rachel sorted here.
Thank you, sir.
Rachel's at the bottom of the screen. Oh, good.
Rachel, are you there?
Hello, say, how are you?
Okay, which do you want me to load the first part first? Correct? You sent me 2 files.
First, but then the second one, I sent it as a PDF. Yes, the second one, it's a complete document, but in the PDF form.
Okay. Okay. Give us a second here. Okay, Rachel, I have your PDF projected. Can you see that? Can the rest of you see that?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Rachel, and let me know when you want me to change your slide.
Okay, thank you, Sam.
Great.
Okay, my spotlight collection. Sorry. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Rachel. I'm presenting from Zimbabwe. I was working as a teacher and I'm still working as a teacher. I'm a graduate from Africa University. I'm also a pastor in Grace Embassy International Ministry. And I'm the one who is also about to graduate with an MA in Applied Community Development. Can you move? Next slide. Okay, to whom my spotlight collection is intended. It is intended to my fellow classmates, intended to FGU family, intended to women around the globe. I would want to make women realize the potential in them and that they are strong change agents who can bring development into the community. I also want to pinpoint issues on equity, issues on collaboration, empowerment, and participatory action, as well as the importance of communication and partnership. The purpose of this is to show the intensity of the master's course and its applicability in real life, and maybe express my interest in a PhD in applied community development so that the owners maybe might put consideration of that route. Prior to FGU, I was serving as a professional teacher. I attend to learners aged between 13 and 20 years. I majored in humanities. I teach religious studies, history, and I'm also a guidance and counseling teacher. Besides that, I coach badminton as well as tennis. And like I said before, I'm a pastor, I'm married to an apostle, and I'm also a leader of women. On my far left, it's a picture showing ladies. We were on an outing with the ladies, and on the far right, it's a picture showing myself and the badminton team at a tournament. How I joined FGU, I was one person who tried to engage in 2 different master's degrees at different times. One in master's in family and child protection. The other time it was in development studies, but unfortunately I deferred both due to financial constraints. Then when I was just about to register with this other institute called CODI in Canada, that's when my sister's husband said, why don't you try FGU? I didn't know about FGU. Then there and there, I logged in, and before I knew it, I was already registered with Future Generations University. I did not have any specific program, but I only had passion for orphans, widows, the vulnerable, women, but I didn't know how exactly to go about it. At my own capacity, in my own ways, I used to reach out to them. Then there is the personal goals. I focus on empowering women to engage them in sustainable change. I also see myself as a change agent who is there to impact the world. I have realized this even through the religious work that I carry and the educational circles where I operate on day-to-day basis. I aim to drive positive change in the community. Then the pictures are showing ladies in the church there. The other one, we're coming from an outing, a prayer a prayer night vigil. It only shows how I engage with ladies even prior to joining FGU. Then I see seed scale as the trigger to everything. I see seed scale as a trigger. It unlocked my mind, my passion, my vision, and the energy in me. I realized the community that I was supposed to start working with. And I also came to a point of understanding a community is a group of people who share something in common and there's potential to work together. And that simplified it all because I had a headache in the first place to say, since I'm not engaged in this other circle of life, the community development thing, how am I going to go about it? But with this definition, I managed to realize a community to work with. And the community that I've been working with, I took it from the religious circles, from the church. So with seed scale, I began to realize the energies within me and within the community. I began to build from the church, the ladies fellowship. Since you have been gathering from time immemorial, I built from those relationships. That's building from success and strengthening the relationships that has been there. So seed scale was empowering me. I'm now focused and I now have targets. So I realized my shortfalls and I'm making amends to that through the seed skills. I took quite a number of courses, Introduction to Community Change, where I learned what a community is. I took Taking Impact to Scale, and in that course, I learned to scale up a project, doing what is called scenario plans, how to diversify, to do grant writing, and mastering that. It is the consents of the donor that matters, especially in grant writing. Then through one course I took called Masterclass, I learned what is called the emergency and how to develop a work plan. The local coordinating committee, the scaling up of a project. It was a great time learning from Daniel Taylor and the alumni in Victoria Falls. I also got the chance to implement that masterclass work plan. It was also an interesting experience that I witnessed the first-hand success. However, there were also areas to improve in that project, especially on the products that we made. We made petroleum jelly and we made pine gel. So feedback pointed to areas like adding more glycerin to the petroleum jelly and branding our products. The other challenge that I witnessed in that project is that membership fee could not be paid in time by some interested ladies. So the other one is on gathering people physically in one place. That was also a challenge. Working with Professor Daniel Taylor was something that I cannot really explain. It was so good. I took, actually, I can say 4 courses with him, 3 courses and 1 independent study. And a picture there is showing a work plan draft that I created in Introduction to Community Change. One in the middle is showing Daniel Taylor in Zimbabwe, Harare, teaching on seed scale. And the other one is showing myself and another alumni in Victoria Falls going through the learning of seed scale. Then I put emphasis on the 4 principles: building from success, the 3-way partnership, evidence, and behavior change. The pictures there are showing meetings that I took with the church leaders, meetings that I took with the women and youth. Then below there is a workshop where we're teaching people on pine gel preparation as well as petroleum jelly. And those videos there are showing the process of making pine gel and the process of making petroleum jelly. And on the far right there, it's a woman applying petroleum jelly on her son, as well as a picture showing the products that have been packed and the ladies holding their products and as they were taking them home. So I learned to build from success the way I'd gathered women, then introduced this idea of empowerment and they grabbed it. And from there, those are the results. I learned to identify positives and to build on them, to reach out to people and to build a team. like through the skills I got from other courses like communication skills, courses like social research for social change. The courses, they are interwoven. So in one way or the other, they serve the same purpose. Those are artifacts from strategic communication, from social research for social change. I mainly learned that research is not it's not research if it is not used for social change. So it's meaningful when you use that research for social change. You can slide up. You can get down a bit. Thank you. I also learned to gather information concerning maybe a community in a smart way. When I learned about the Transect work, there are so many tools that I learned through social change. I also learned that through strategic communication, that communication is not communication if it's not effective. So there is need for effective communication where you send a message and it's received and you also get the feedback. So those are some of the aspects that I can point to that are crucial to my learning.
You have 11 minutes gone, Rachel.
Okay, thank you. Then through the course I took in leadership with Dr. Hani, I learned different leadership styles, advantages and disadvantages. And there's something that is called leadership inventory that I did for myself, and I got to know my strengths and my weaknesses and how I need to adjust. And that's a picture showing that I'm a leader in church. And on the far right is the roles that I learned through the leadership inventory. I learned I'm an advocate, I'm an evaluator, I'm a mentor, a decision maker, a curriculum developer, a trainer, and so on. You can name it as they are displayed there. On. Then I also got a chance to take a residential course in Vietnam, where I witnessed how they shifted from rice production into diversification. They are now into shrimp production. They are now into tourism, into fish farming, into flowers production, transport business, and so on. I got to understand the importance of organic agriculture, and as well as the importance of going bilingual, as I witnessed it firsthand in Vietnam. On the far left there, it's a picture where we're being shown a community of 60 households who are involved in different economic activities. Some are into catering, some are into transport business, some are into fish farming and the like. Then in the middle, it's showing the type of food that they eat. Then on the far right, it was a presentation on organic farming when we visited an organic farm. I also learned a lot through monitoring and evaluation, as well as the most important thing I can point in monitoring and evaluation is the aspect of key indicators, the aspect of the theory of change, then the qualitative and quantitative methods of gathering information. In sustainable communities, I mainly learned about the livelihood approaches, and it is through this course that I managed to design this woman empowerment on the aspect of letting the community has ownership in it, the community getting some compensation out of it. As I learned through sustainable communities, I took a research on campfire. So I learned that and I applied it in that project. And below there are the artifacts showing the underlying theory of change and the different artifacts I took in monitoring and evaluation, as well as in sustainable communities. Can we move to the next? How I reflect on this, I realized throughout the master's chain that the trait of women, the trait of the girl child, the trait of the vulnerable, it's kind of common throughout the courses or the artifacts that I did throughout the course. I saw my passion whenever I was supposed to do an artifact in a course, I was driven to that trait. There's passion in me towards that group. And it was unearthed by the seed scale framework through the courses that I took. All the courses are in tandem. They support each other. They strengthen each other. They emphasize the seed scale effectiveness. The communications course helps me to communicate in appropriate ways and effective ways. Leadership course helps me to prefer servant leadership over other styles. Monitoring and evaluation helps me to track progress, to monitor, and to know the appropriate action to take at a given time. So all the courses that I took, they synthesize and they integrate, bringing to surface the growth and success of seed scale in my project. So they are not divorced from each other, but they merge. And this merging, I'm realizing it in this woman empowerment project that I'm doing. How I visualize all this, I see it as a bicycle wheel where the seed scale, I can take seed scale as the hub, as it is the center of the wheel, it is the anchor for the spokes. Then I can take the courses as the spokes that connect the hub and that apply the tension evenly and create a strong and stable wheel. Then the rim, I can take it as the curriculum development overall that forms the outside of everything. And below that, I put the link to my learning matrix collection, where one can get further viewing of the artifacts that I have. So what I got in this master's and how we did it is far beyond the expectations that I had in the first place. I got to understand that there's real learning with future generations. The courses and the objectives, they have a special way of integrating and pointing to the emphasis and depth. There's coherence and mastery of a well-thought syllabus. The courses are interwoven. There is a relationship throughout the courses. And the differences in objectives in various courses, they all point to diversity. So each course has room for implementation of knowledge, for competencies, for skills, and for ensuring concept of mastery. So in everything, the importance of relationships, equity, resilience, sustainability, and holism is pinpointed. So throughout this course, my mind was challenged to think global and to act locally. I thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. We have room for one question in your 18. You want to stop sharing, please? Oh, I'm sharing. Is there a question? Well, thank you, Rachel. I did want to take advantage of the fact that I've got you all here. Sheillah, could you share your homepage again, please? You can ask Sheillah questions separately if you want. Send her an email. But I wanted to take advantage that you're all here to show something. Sheillah can share her screen. Okay, I want you all to notice today we've been seeing a presentation of the Spotlight collection, but what Sheillah is showing here is her master's portfolio, and at the top you'll see there's a home page, communications, courses completed, program learning objectives, a digital CV, a Spotlight collection, and prior learning. So each student will have a master's portfolio. It's like an expanded CV with at least these categories. And what you have been seeing the last 2 days is the Spotlight collection, which is a narrative that the student chooses to tell. Okay. I just wanted to, that since you're all gathered here, yes, Chris, do you have a question?
Dan, when you're done explaining this, I have a question for Rachel.
Okay, I am done explaining it. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, Rachel, you had said that you had worked with different communities you've been a teacher, you've worked with women in ministry, and I was curious because I remember your master class presentation with the different products that you were working with women to help them to have livelihoods. And I was curious if the students that you had worked with in education had any crossover with those that you had been working with in women's ministry. If you had found that some of the needs that you had seen in the education sector were starting to come into your other communities, or if they were interlinked in any way.
Thank you, Kirsty. The students that I work with in school in the education sector, some of them, I met them at church, and they accepted the idea of livelihoods. So from those pictures, I think the pictures that I showed, there are two girls who also took part in the pine gel production and petroleum jelly production. So some of them, they are limited financially. Some of them, the learners, they are occupied with their studies, but they showed interest to say the moment we get time, we can as well engage in it. It is also maybe interesting for me to highlight that even at the education sector at our schools there, things like pine gel making, soap making, and the livelihood things are now being taught in schools. So I think there is a common aspect here that both sectors are realizing the need for livelihoods. So even if it's not coming from me, the education sector is also now ventured into these livelihood things, and they are now teaching those skills.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I want to thank you all for coming and to hearing the spotlight presentations, and will be available for people to see in the future.